1 month later, I sat in a courtroom as a judge opened the envelope that changed everything. Before that, I signed a paper while my daughter-in-law screamed that I'd exploited her husband for 5 years. People think those two moments are far apart. They're not. We were in a small conference room off the trauma wing. The air smelled like burnt coffee. I swear hospitals always smell like that when something's wrong. Brian was upstairs. My son. Car wreck. Traumatic brain injury. The doctor used words like temporarily incapacitated. They sounded clean. They weren't. His wife leaned over the table and yelled it again. Slow this time. For 5 years. You exploited my husband. By my husband, she meant Brian, not mine. Mine's been gone a long time. I didn't argue. I watched her hands shake when she talked. I watched the lawyer keep his pen capped. I read the document. Not a transfer, not a sale. A statement saying I would never claim anything. Ever. Future. Past. Clean slate. Honestly, I'd signed worse things without reading them. This one, I read twice. My name is Ione Parker. I'm 61. I've made stupid decisions my whole life. Most of them were about family. I didn't come here planning to fix that. She kept talking. About money. About the house. About how I'd been living off Brian. I wanted to say I'd sold my own place years ago. That I'd paid him back when I could. That families don't always keep receipts. I didn't. Here's the part nobody likes. I signed because it felt like the only move left. Not brave. Not noble. Just necessary. If you've ever been cornered like that, you know the feeling. If you haven't, good for you. The pen clicked. The room relaxed. I folded my copy and put it in my coat. Brian still couldn't speak, so I let the paper do the talking. She didn't come at me loud this time. She came neat. I handled the accounts. She told the lawyer, not me. Every month, I saw everything. I kept my hands folded. That part was true. For 5 years, she ran the numbers. Brian trusted her with that. I did too, back when trust still felt cheap. She pulled out printed pages, highlighted lines, transfers from Brian to me, same week every month, rent, utilities, groceries sometimes. She tapped the paper like it could bleed. That's support. She went on. That's dependency. He paid. She lived. Nobody corrected her. The lawyer nodded once, like this was settled math. I wanted to jump in. I almost did. My mouth even opened. Then I shut it again, because what she never saw wasn't on those pages. Not the year I sold my house. Not the wire I sent when Brian's business tanked. Not the emergency money that went out before there was ever a spreadsheet to track it. Those payments back to me, Brian called them getting square. She called them feeding a burden. She finally looked at me. She had seen the money leaving his account for years. But I realized then she had chosen to label it as charity rather than asking about its origin. I didn't correct her grammar. I didn't correct the story either. I just met her eyes and let her believe she'd caught me clean. Here's the ugly truth. If I'd been sitting where she was, I might have believed the same thing. That thought stuck with me longer than her accusation. Brian had always hated explaining himself, avoided fights, avoided clarity. I'd let him. That silence was doing its work now. When we stood to leave, she gathered her papers like trophies. I left mine where they were. The numbers weren't done talking yet. They brought up the house next. That was always coming. The title is in Brian's name, his wife told the lawyer, but your occupancy rights are undocumented. We need this signed to clear the path for the bank. The lawyer flipped pages. Title confirms it. I nodded once. Not agreement. Recognition. Hazelwood Avenue had been hanging over us like a ceiling crack nobody wanted to look at. She leaned back. Arms crossed. So let's stop pretending. He paid. She stayed. That's the pattern. I kept quiet. The truth was messier. Years earlier, when my credit was already shot and Brian still had room to breathe, I put up the down payment. I emptied what I had left after selling my place. We agreed the house would go in his name, temporary, practical, family logic, no paperwork, just a handshake at my kitchen table, and a promise that felt solid back then. None of that shows up on a title search, the lawyer asked. Do you dispute the ownership? I could have corrected him. Mom, I could have explained the down payment, the cashier's check, the night Brian slept on my couch because he couldn't look at his balance sheet. I didn't. His wife caught the pause and pressed harder. She won't deny it because she can't. The house proves everything. Her voice had that tight edge people get when they think they're finally being heard. Power does that. It straightens your spine. I watched Brian's signature at the bottom of the mortgage copy. I'd watched him sign it in real life, too. He'd been nervous. I'd told him it was fine. I'd told him family didn't keep score. That lie felt expensive now. I folded my hands again. Let them see what they wanted. Every time she stacked another piece of evidence, she leaned further into the story she'd built. I wasn't in a rush to knock it down. When we stood up, she looked relieved, like the ground had finally stopped moving under her feet. I followed them out, already thinking about how solid ground can crack without warning. After that meeting, everything tightened. I showed up the next morning and the nurse at the desk checked a clipboard, then shook her head. He's not cleared for visitors right now. Her voice stayed neutral, like this was weather. His wife stepped in before I could answer. The doctors want quiet. He needs rest. She didn't look at me when she said it. I asked for the doctor anyway. A man in a wrinkled coat met us in the hall. He talked fast, careful with his words. Traumatic brain injury, temporary loss of capacity, unable to make legal or financial decisions at this time. He kept his eyes on the floor when he finished, like he'd already learned not to linger. So you're saying he can't sign anything, the lawyer added. Stepping closer. Not safely. The doctor replied. Not right now. That was enough. Back in the conference room, the lawyer set the paper between us again. This isn't about taking anything from you. He went on. It's about preventing future conflict while Brian recovers. His wife nodded along. It protects everyone. I watched how they used that word, everyone. It didn't include me. If you don't sign, the lawyer continued, these matters stay unresolved. Decisions get delayed. Medical bills keep stacking. That creates problems. I caught the shift right there. Not a threat. A suggestion shaped like concern. I asked one question. Who requested this document? His wife answered before anyone else could. I did. I took my time reading it again. The phrasing, the timing, the way my name was written. Full and formal. Like it was already being archived. I started keeping track then. Names. Dates. Who spoke first? Who avoided eye contact? The lawyer's exact wording. Her exact pauses. I looked at the signature line. I had already signed their initial statement of renunciation, but now they wanted a full waiver of residency. She exhaled. The room loosened. I folded my copy and slipped it into my bag. Once, I glanced at the hallway that led to Brian's room. You don't get many choices when the person who should speak for you can't. I walked out with them, already planning what I'd do while they believed the hard part was over. Brian's wife liked to talk about 5 years. I kept thinking further back. Before the marriage, before the house, before spreadsheets and folders. Back when Brian's business folded in on itself like wet cardboard. He showed up at my door with a box of files and a look he couldn't hide. He didn't ask for money. He asked for time. The bank didn't give him any. I did. I wired the money straight to his business account. It existed in the digital ether. A paper trail I hadn't thought to print until the world turned cold. No contracts, No interest, no witnesses. He hugged me like he was 16 again and promised we'd make it right later. Later came in pieces. A few thousand here, groceries covered there, rent when my hours got cut. He called it catching up. I called it my son breathing again. We never wrote it down. That part is on me. When his wife came along, the story shifted. She saw the payments, but not the beginning. She saw me living in a house with his name on it and thought she knew the whole arc. Brian never corrected her. He hated conflict. He hated explaining himself even more. I tried once. Over dinner, she smiled and changed the subject. I let it go. Another mistake. That's the thing about family money. It feels smaller when you give it. Bigger when someone else measures it. I told myself we didn't need paperwork. That love was enough proof. Sitting alone later, I spread old bank statements on the table. Dates, amounts, gaps. Not perfect, not clean, but real. I traced Brian's handwriting on a note he'd left me years ago, thanking me for not letting him drown. Love without records doesn't disappear. It just gets easier to erase. I gathered everything into a folder and wrote one name on the front. Mine. The change in her was immediate. Brian's wife leaned back in her chair like she'd been holding her breath for hours. I'm glad you finally understood. She told me, voice softer now. Not kind, settled. The lawyer slid the signed pages into his folder. This resolves potential disputes. He added, already packing up. His job was done. At least, that's what he thought. I kept my face still. Inside, I was counting. What the paper actually did. What it didn't. No transfer. No sale. No admission of guilt. Just a promise not to make future claims. Narrow, fragile, context dependent. That part mattered more than the tone. She walked me to the door. You should start thinking about other arrangements. She went on, eyes already somewhere past me. Brian needs stability. I nodded. Let her have the word. 2 days later, I met an attorney across town, not flashy, older. The kind who listens more than he talks. I laid the document out flat. He read it once. Then again, this isn't the kill shot they think it is. He muttered. It's leverage. And not very good leverage. I didn't smile. I asked what I should keep. Everything. He replied. Copies, emails, dates. Especially how this landed on your lap. I went home and made duplicates. The signed paper, the unsigned drafts, the notes I'd kept in the margins. I labeled each one in my own handwriting, slow and careful. I even kept the envelope it came in. Postmarks matter more than people realize. Here's a small truth, just between us. When someone thinks they've won, they stop paying attention. They stop guarding their edges. That's when you get your balance back. By the end of the week, she'd stopped calling altogether. Brian gave me the envelope after their first big fight about the house. He knew her suspicion was growing. No warning. No ceremony. We were standing in my kitchen, the sink dripping like it always did when the washer ran. Hold this for me, he told me, sliding it across the counter. I laughed a little. What is this? A will. He didn't laugh back. She's starting to ask about the house, Mom. He had said, if things get ugly between us, let the papers speak. That was it. No explanation, no instructions, just that line, dropped heavy between us. Brian had a habit of saying things halfway, like finishing them might start a fight. I didn't push. I wish I had. Or maybe I don't. Hard to tell now. I didn't open it right away. I tucked it into a drawer with old manuals and takeout menus. Life kept moving. Work. Groceries. A text from him about dinner plans that never happened. After the hospital meeting, I took the envelope out. My hands shook more than I expected. Inside were copies of repayment transfers. Not all of them. Enough. A note in his handwriting. Rushed but clear. He wrote that the money I received was repayment for earlier support. He called it a family debt. He signed his name like he always did, looping the last letter too wide. There was also a business card. An attorney I didn't recognize. Brian had circled the name in pen. I sat there longer than I meant to, not crying, just breathing. I realized something then. Brian hadn't trusted the timing. He'd trusted the truth to wait. I put everything back exactly how I found it. Slid the envelope into my bag. Some things only matter when the right person opens them. The legal review finally arrived. No raised voices. No gasps. Just papers moving hands to hands. The judge looked tired. That helped. Tired people listen. Brian's wife sat straight, jaw locked. Her lawyer leaned in close, whispering in bursts. Mine stayed back. He'd told me to let the documents do the work. I took that advice more seriously than anything else that week. Let's start with the renunciation, the judge began, holding up the paper I'd signed. Context matters here. Her lawyer jumped in. It's a clear statement. She waived future claims. Future claims, the judge repeated. Eyes still on the page. Signed while the principal party was temporarily incapacitated. He looked up at the doctor's report next. Traumatic brain injury, impaired judgment, successus, no legal capacity. The words sat heavy on the table. Were there alternatives presented, he asked. Silence stretched. Then the lawyer answered. It was advised as a precaution. Advised by whom? No one rushed to fill that gap. My attorney slid the envelope forward. If the court will allow. My attorney presented the sealed envelope to the court. The judge reviewed the contents with a slow, deliberate focus, tracing the transfer records and dates that lined up years before the marriage. Transfer records. Dates lining up years before the marriage. A handwritten note from Brian, acknowledging repayment, not polished, not dramatic. Real. Brian's wife shifted in her seat. That doesn't change the fact he paid her for 5 years. She pressed. The money went out every month. The judge nodded once. And came in before that, in larger sums, earlier. He tapped the note. This reframes the pattern. These are repayments, not support, her lawyer tried again. Even so. The document is narrow, the judge cut in. And the circumstances surrounding its signing raise concerns. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Recognition. The room had turned. The judge set the paper down. The renunciation is invalid. It was executed under pressure, during a period of incapacity, without full disclosure. Brian's wife stared straight ahead. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. The story she'd built had collapsed without anyone calling her a liar. Court ended without ceremony. No speeches, no apologies. People stood, chairs scraped. The world kept moving. As we filed out, my attorney leaned toward me. You did well staying quiet. I thought about the envelope in my bag, about how long the truth had waited. Judgment had rushed. The truth hadn't. Brian asked to see everything once the doctors cleared him, not just the court papers. Everything. We sat at a small table near his bed. He looked thinner, quieter. His voice came back rough, like it had to push through gravel. Start from the beginning. He told me. I slid the folder across. Bank statements. The note he'd written, copies of the document I signed. He read slow, stopped, went back. I watched his face change as the pieces lined up. That part hurt more than the yelling ever did. I didn't explain, he muttered. I thought if I stayed out of it, things would calm down. His wife stepped forward. You were recovering. You weren't thinking clearly. Brian shook his head. No, I was thinking the way I always do. Avoiding. He turned to me. I let her believe something that wasn't true. I let you take the hit. I shrugged. Not forgiveness, not blame, just space. He looked back at her. You controlled the money. You controlled the story, and you shut her out when I couldn't speak. She crossed her arms. I was protecting us. From what he pressed. From my own history, the room tightened. You could feel where things stopped being salvageable. I'm taking back financial authority. Brian continued. Joint decisions. No more unilateral calls. And you don't speak for me again. Not medically. Not legally. She stared at him like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. I stayed quiet. That was important. This wasn't my line to draw. Brian reached for my hand. His grip was weak but deliberate. I should have put it in writing, he added. I should have spoken sooner. I squeezed once and let go. I wasn't here to be reassured. I needed him standing up straight. He asked for a moment alone with her. I stepped into the hall. The smell of antiseptic hit me late. Hospitals do that. They wait. Here's my small break from the story. This part. This is where parents usually rush in, fix things, smooth edges. I didn't. When he called me back in, his eyes were steady, tired, clear. He'd chosen his side, not mine. The truths? I picked up my coat. There were still decisions ahead. I just wasn't making them for him anymore. The changes came quietly. That's how real consequences usually show up. Brian asked for a meeting with the attorney a week later. I sat in the corner, not invited, not needed. He spoke carefully, slower than before, like every word had weight now. Joint authority only, he told her. No more single signatures, no more decisions made in my name without me in the room. His wife tried to argue. That's not practical. It's necessary, he replied. Practical got us here. The accounts were restructured. Spending limits. Dual approvals. Medical decisions routed through a neutral advocate. Nothing dramatic. No shouting. Just control redistributed, piece by piece, back to where it belonged. She didn't cry. She went very still. That was worse for her. Power leaving feels different than punishment. You can't yell at it later. She cornered me in the hallway. You got what you wanted, she muttered. I shook my head. No. I got what I needed. She didn't understand the difference. That was never my job. I packed my things that afternoon. Not in a rush. Not angry. Brian watched from the doorway. I'll call. He told me. I know. I answered. And I did. Here's the part I want to say out loud, because it matters outside this room. Love doesn't cancel the need for boundaries. Family doesn't excuse silence. And control, when it goes unchecked, always sends the bill somewhere else. Love doesn't cancel the need for boundaries. Family doesn't excuse silence. And control, when it goes unchecked, always sends the bill somewhere else. I walked out without looking back. No victory speech, no clean ending, just space. And for the first time in a long while, it felt earned.